Hi, this is Joshua Evans, former Christian youth minister, back on The Dean Show to tell you my story about how I came to Islam. Coming up next, you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Come and see what everyone's talking about. One can never be too cautious.
Hey! Man, I'm really sorry. Can I get you another drink? Hey!
What up, player?
Man, you just got it all over my pants and my shoes, man. Man, I'm real sorry, man. Let me get you another cup. Man, I don't want another cup. You gotta watch where you're walking, man. Man, I'm sorry. I don't want any problems. I'm gonna get out of here, okay? Where you gonna go? Man, please get your hands off me. What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do about it? I've had enough of your... Ah! Let's go, man. Let's do, man. Yeah, I'm cool, dude, man. Let's go with my arm, man. Yeah, I got you, man. Let's... Ah!
I've had enough of your...
Oh!
One can never be too cautious.
Hey, man, where'd you learn that? I trained jiu-jitsu. You got time? I'll show you. Come on.
Come and see what everyone's talking about.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
I'm good, very good.
Thank you.
Praise be to God.
Thank you for coming out again. You've been with us before on the Dean Show.
A few times.
And we're glad that you're back with us again. And we're excited. We want to hear your story. Many of the viewers that tune in regularly to the Dean Show, they've gotten to heard, but many haven't.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of go back and try to help bring this story to the rest of the world. And we're going to try to let even more people benefit. Really quickly, you were a former Christian youth minister.
Yes.
And you grew up going to church every day, every other day, because from what we were told before, you actually lived next to a church.
Yeah, I lived a couple of houses down from the church.
A couple of houses down. So let's start from there. Tell us real briefly, for the people that don't know, most of our viewers know who you are, but for those that don't, tell us a little about yourself, and let's go on into your story and how you came to this beautiful way of life, Islam.
Well, as they say about the beginnings, let's begin there. I was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, in a very traditional Methodist, Christian, Southern, conservative home. I was raised by my grandparents. My mother had stepped out, and my dad was working 2 jobs, so he was not home a lot. So I spent a lot of time with my retired grandparents, and they were very old-fashioned, as they say, old-fashioned in the sense, to give you some sense of how old-fashioned they were, like girls were a no-no in my house, if I wanted to invite a girl over, it wasn't just, just invite a girl over, bring her to my room. My grandmother had to know in advance, appointment had to be made. She had to meet her first, then we had to sit in the formal living room, the living room with all the nice stuff where you don't go unless you have company over. And she would either sit in the room and listen to the conversation, or she would sit in the next room, in the dining room where the TV and stuff was, and with the door open and listen. There was no girls in my room, or that was like out. So they were very, very traditional, very old-fashioned, very conservative, Southern Methodist family. And they started taking me to church at a very young age. This was something that was always a part of my house. The reading the Bible was always a part of my life. Praying before we ate. My grandmother prayed before we went to sleep. Every time the wind blew, my grandmother would pray. And this was something I grew up hearing all the time. And I went to church every Sunday. I went to Sunday school. My grandmother would drop me off in Sunday school, then go do their thing and come out. And when I got older, I started attending the regular services. And then I would say at about the age of 14, maybe 13, 14, getting close to 15, I started attending the Saturday night youth services at the gym at our church. And it wasn't like a regular church. It wasn't formal. It was more like we went and we played games, and it was fun interaction. It was all teenagers. It was pizza, sodas, all this fun stuff. And at the end, the youth pastor, the youth minister would give like a 30-minute sermon or a 30-minute lecture, about how we need to draw closer to God, something along that nature. And just so happened that the youth pastor at the time lived catty-corner to me. He lived, across the street, one house up from me, and we became friends. you know, because we used to walk, and he used to walk to the church, I used to walk to the church, so we would see each other, meet each other. And then in my senior year in high school, when I was 15, he used to give me a ride to school, because this was before I had my license, and he had his license, he was a senior, so he used to give me a ride to school. And then after he graduated high school, he started going to Bob Jones University, which was and is one of the most conservative, rigorous Bible training colleges in the country. And he was studying textual criticism, which is a field where you go into the Bible and derive from the original Hebrew and Greek. You know, you find out which one of all these hundreds and thousands of fragments of pages of the Bible, of pages of books, of pieces of books, of this, that, and the other. You go through, and a textual critic goes through and deciphers which one of these are the oldest, you know, by studying where they came from, and studying the ancient manuscripts and carbon dating, all this other stuff. But then they use the text to also try to derive which is the original. Because, you know, just because a document is older does not mean it's necessarily the original document. You know, because the oldest document could have been copied from a non-existent document that had errors. And it could have been a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. But a newer manuscript could have been copied once from an original. Therefore, that would make that manuscript more original than the older manuscript. So this is the challenge that a textual critic has to come up with, and it's a lot of scrutiny because there's no real science behind it. You know, it's a lot of youth, you know, going through and looking at these things with your own hands. And as I got to know him and befriend him, I began to emulate him. You know, I began to, as he was studying, I was studying. You know, I was trying to learn along with him, and I became more involved in the church, and I began to realize that I wanted to, you know, dedicate my life to this cause. I want to dedicate my life to Christianity. This is where I fit in. This was
what
my,
you grew up believing.
This is what I grew up. This was my niche. You know, I wasn't big into the parties and all. You know, at this age, I was not. You know, my grandparents were not having that. My grandfather, basically. My grandfather was not. He was a very, you know, firm, stern, you know, like very strong figure in my family. Like, he was not having it. So I fell into this lifestyle, was going to these different things on Wednesday nights, Thursday nights. You know, there would be things going on like Crusaders for Christ and all this stuff. You know, I was attending everything I could get my hands on, reading this, that, and the other. You know, reading things from the Moody Institute, all of these different things. So I decided in my freshman year of high school, I decided that I wanted to go to Bob Jones University. And there was a very long waiting list, so I had already enrolled.
Now, how old were you at this point?
15.
15.
15 at this time, going on 16. So I wanted to go to Bob Jones and emulate my friend. As I started studying more with him and started learning a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Greek, started reading the Bible for myself, me and him both decided we're going to start from the beginning of the Bible, and we're going to read it from beginning to end, doing a study, beginning to end, you know, like not over a period of a year, but as quickly as we can, beginning to end, beginning to end. And I did this, I would say probably about 2 times. And the second time around, the first time I started noticing things that did not really sit right with me, but because it was such a large book, you know, I figured, you know, maybe I just missed some things along the way. The second and the third time, the fourth time, is when I really started to pick up there's something wrong here. You know, because number one, the Bible taught that Noah was an alcoholic, you know, and to me, it didn't fit right, you know, because I have seen family members that had dealt with alcoholism, and an alcoholic has trouble holding down a job at a fast food restaurant, you know, doing simple tasks that involve logical thinking. So now, if Noah wasn't...
Just to point out, Noah would be one of God's messengers.
Yes, Noah is one of the very earliest messengers, speaking of, in the Bible. He was a very, very early messenger.
We're not just talking about some ordinary man.
No, we're talking about God's prophet. And Noah was actually the one God commanded to build the ark, to save humanity when he destroyed the world with a flood.
Yeah.
So Noah was given the task of saving this world with an ark by building a huge ark all by himself. And I'm thinking to myself, how does an alcoholic accomplish this? Number one, how does he know that it was God speaking to him if he was drunk?
Now, what does the Bible actually say about him drinking?
That he was a drunkard and would be passed out in this drunken state. It refers to him, Noah was a drunkard.
Yeah.
This statement is in the Bible.
It says that in the
Noah
Bible.
was a drunkard.
Okay.
So this didn't make sense to me. How could Noah be a prophet of God, build an ark to save humanity, he was an alcoholic? You know, so You know, I kind of let that roll off my back. You go a little farther. Then you reach like the story of Lot, you know, Abraham and Lot. You know, Lot was the one who was of Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, the ones,
Yes.
the cities that were destroyed because of their homosexuality. It is said that Lot's daughters got him drunk, basically doped him up, and slept with him, and then bore children through this incest. You know, and again, this is supposed to be a prophet of God. Then you get to the story of David. David is considered one of the greatest prophets of the Jews and of Christians. David, the one who reconstructed the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. And you get to his story, and his story in the Bible says that he saw a woman, Bathsheba, and she was, you know, laying out sunbathing, whatever, and decided that he could not control his desires, that he wanted her. So he took